gentleman from Florida, Mr. DeSantis, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Deputy Attorney General, when Sally Yates defied President Trump's travel restriction order at the end of January 2017, was that appropriate what she did?
I disagreed with her decision.
So if you're in a position where you get an order, your job is to follow the order. If you think it's unconstitutional, then your response would be to resign your office, correct?
Well, my response would be, I think, first to talk with the person who gave the order. But ultimately, if I concluded it were unconstitutional, I would not implement it. And
obviously, you can't have a department operating where each one's a law unto themselves, or if they happen to think something's bad, that they just don't follow the orders, correct?
That's exactly right.
So it bothered me then, one of the recent revelations, you have Andrew Weissman. Yeah, he's a big Democrat donor, which I agree doesn't disqualify you from being fair. He went to Hillary's supposed victory party. Doesn't mean that necessarily disqualifies you. But when she took that action, he sends her an email with his DOJ email account saying how he's in awe and so proud of her basically standing up to Trump. I mean, it was seen as a very direct rebuke to the president. So your test was, are the political opinions affecting how one conducts himself in office? I think that's a fair test. But isn't that example of that email an example of his strongly held anti-Trump opinions affecting how he's conducting himself on his official email?
As I mentioned, Congressman, I've discussed this general issue with Director Mueller on several occasions. He understands the importance of ensuring that there is no bias reflected in the conduct of the investigation.
It looks bad to the public. I'm just telling you that right now. Part of it is there an actual bias? But as you know, as someone very experienced, is there an appearance of that? And this appears that to be, because clearly what she did was not something that that experienced prosecutors would think was good. And obviously the Supreme Court has slapped it down. The Russia investigation, who started it? Who was the agent? Was it Strzok who started it? Who opened it, the case?
Congressman, that matter is under review by the Intelligence Committee, and there's nothing that I can talk about publicly regarding the initiation of the investigation, but I can assure you that we're going to provide appropriate access to the Intelligence Committee to what they need to answer.
Did the FBI pay for the dossier?
I'm not in position to answer that question, Congressman. But
you know the answer to the question?
That is, I believe I know the answer, but the Intelligence Committee is the appropriate committee to make that.
That is not true. We have oversight over your department and the FBI, and whether public funds were spent on a dossier, that is not something that's classified. We have every right to that information. You should provide it. If you're not, then there will probably be things. Was that info used to get surveillance over anybody associated with Trump?
I appreciate that question, Congressman, and I know that's been a concern for several members of the committee. I have set aside about a half hour every day to review FISA applications, and it is not legal for me to talk about those applications, so I'm not able to answer one way or the other.
Well, I'd like that authority. I think that you can say, and you may not be able to talk about the sources and message of the substance, but if this was used, we need to know that. Do you agree that given, so what was the role of Bruce Orr? He met with Christopher Steele before the election. Was that an authorized meeting?
Congressman, I do not know all the details. This information is still developing, so I don't know the full story, but we've agreed to make Mr. Orr available for congressional interviews, and they'll be free to ask him those questions.
You need to pursue it. It's your department. You demoted him. He's working with Christopher Steele. You have an anti-Trump dossier funded by the Democratic Party. His wife works for Fusion GPS. This doesn't look good, so we need answers to those questions.
I'm not suggesting that I'm disinterested, Congressman, just that we've done everything
we can to
allow you to get those answers.
Let me ask you this. The role of Mr. Strzok, how much of this Russia investigation was due to him? Because, yes, Mueller saw the text. Obviously, I think there was nothing he could do. You get rid of him. But how much of this whole investigation has been infected with his bias? Have you made a determination on that?
I have not, but I do want you to know, and again, without talking specifically about this investigation, that the FBI does have procedures for all investigations to ensure that they're appropriately vetted, so there's no case where any one individual would be able to make decisions on that.
I hope that, but if you look at that damning text on 15 August 2016, this is bad. He says, I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's Andrew McCabe's office, that there's no way he, meaning Donald Trump, gets elected. But I'm afraid we can't take that risk. We in the FBI can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40. So let me ask you this. If you have those Walmart shopping Trump voters that Peter Strzok so derided in his text messages, how did they react to that? Do they have confidence in their FBI and their Department of Justice when you see that you can't let the American people vote somebody in who they want to?
Congressman, I think what I hope you can tell your constituents and to provide reassurance to the American people is that we have appropriate internal affairs officers who will get to the bottom of that. Our Inspector General is the one who exposed that, and he's going to deliver a report, and we're going to take...
When is that report due?
You know,
Gentleman's out of time.
I believe it's going to be relatively soon. I believe he's actually testifying coincidentally next door. He knows I want to complete it as quickly as possible, but consistent with his responsibilities to make sure he gets it right.
I thank the gentleman. Yield back.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Mr. Raskin for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman,